He is Matt Dowd, our political analyst here at Bloomberg, helping us to game out what last night's wins mean for the Romney campaign and, of course, for the fight against the president this fall. Matt, a couple of questions to start off with. What Peter said, if Rick Santorum can't win in Pennsylvania, is it fair to say it's all over for the guy? And even before we get to Pennsylvania, for the sake of the Republican Party, should he be stepping aside?
Well, I mean, yeah, you're right. Even before Pennsylvania, it's time for him to go. But many of these candidates don't go from denial to acceptance in a very timely fashion, and he's got to get to acceptance of this. I think if he wants to preserve any political capital and any voice in the Republican Party, he should step down this week, and that would be best for him and the party. I don't think he's going to do that, but that's what he ought to do.
Now, what does this do for Mitt Romney's campaign dollars? He continues to drain them as Obama is raising money. And when he really turns the corner to potentially face Obama here, Obama's going to be the guy standing up saying, I killed Osama bin Laden and the economy's doing better on my watch. I mean, what kind of dollars does Mitt Romney need and what has he drained to face off here?
Well, that's a huge problem he's got because he's raised a lot of money, but he's spent almost every dollar of it. He's going to end this race by the end of this month with almost zero cash on hand. The president's going to have a huge amount. Mitt Romney's going to be the exact reverse position that he was in the primary, where he was outspending his opponents 3, 4, 5, 6 to 1.
And isn't this a much tougher fight?
You know, it's a much tougher fight against an incumbent president of the United States. There's only one Democrat in the last 100 years that has lost a re-election for presidency. It was Jimmy Carter in 1980. And so he's going to be faced with the exact thing Rick Santorum was faced with, which was being outspent by somebody that was a formal opponent. He's got to raise money. He's got to raise it fast, and he's got to do it by July 4th.
I'm curious about the face-off on actual economic policy. It's the economy election. Romney said that Obama's economic policies have been a bust. Who has the upper hand here? I mean, Romney certainly has the experience, but Obama can point to the improvement. Well,
it's a great question, Sarah, because I think what you're going to see is dueling argument. What you're going to see from Mitt Romney is take a look at where the country was in January when the president took office and where it is today, and we've still not caught up with jobs. That will be his argument. President Obama's argument is going to be take a look at where we were at the worst point a year or so ago, year and a half ago, and look what we've done since then, which he's got a positive trajectory in adding jobs in the stock market. And so that's going to be the dueling argument. I think it's a tougher argument for Mitt Romney to make today on the economy than it was 6 months ago because people are feeling more and more positive about the economy, but he still has to put his money on the economy because it's the only way he can win.
Nevertheless, the data points show the economy is getting better. So how does that help a Rick Santorum that the economy is getting better and he can point to social issues as his main platform?
Well, that was his window. He had a small window of opportunity to win this race. I actually think the race was probably over when he failed to come out at the debate before Michigan and win Michigan. Once he lost Michigan, that was his window. He was turning to social issues. He was getting some wind behind his back. And then he had a bad debate performance. And ever since then, he has not been able to get that back. And that's why Mitt Romney is really the Republican nominee at this point.
And it's better, but we still have 8.3% unemployment in this country.
Yeah, and that's the argument that Mitt Romney's going to continue to make.
Matt, speaking of which, when are we going to see Mitt the moderate come out? And when he does, how is that going to change his tone, if at all, on the economy and on jobs, the things that people still really care about?
Well, that's a real big strategic question that the campaign and Mitt Romney has to answer because they don't want to do it too soon in the midst of this because they still have a convention to go through with a lot of delegates who are not enthusiastic about him. But I think what you'll start seeing is him unifying the party. He's not even mentioning Rick Santorum's name, as Peter Cook said. You'll start to see him unifying the party, and I think you'll really see that turn when they present messages at the convention. That's when you'll see that big turn to go and start appealing to independent voters. But he has to be careful in the next 3 months to do that while these primaries are still going on.
Who's left for Mitt Romney to raise money from? I mean, he's really gone to his focus core group who supports him. And many voters out there are lukewarm about Mitt, so maybe they'll vote for him. But as far as actually putting dollars behind the guy, who's left that he's going to target?
There's still a large number of Republicans that sat on the sidelines because they like to go with who they absolutely know is the winner. They started coming off the sidelines in the last 30 days, but there's still a large number of those traditional Republican voters and financiers that stayed out of the race waiting for this to happen. I think you'll see him raise quite a bit of money in the next 30 days, but he has, as we've said earlier, he has a huge catch-up to do.
A huge catch-up to a president, the president who only enjoys a 48% approval rating. That's lower than many of the other presidents that in the past, the White House winners, George W. Bush had a 50% approval rating, Clinton 52%. You could see right there, Ronald Reagan 58%. Does that matter, though, that Obama only has 48% approval?
It matters a lot. It's interesting. He is, when the presidents, as you say, that have won election have all had 50% or over. The presidents that have lost election have all had 45 or under. There's been no president that's gone in this election with between that number, between 45 and 50, and that's just where President Obama is. And that's why Mitt Romney knows he's vulnerable, and that's why the White House knows he's vulnerable. If that number gets above 50, then I think it's very tough to beat President Obama. If it gets below 45, it's very hard for President Obama to win election, but it's right in the middle, and that's why this election is going to be very close.
Is that the number we should be focusing on most closely right now?
Well, that number is totally going to be tied to the economic performance. But if I were looking at one number in this election as we go forward and whether or not President Obama can win re-election, his job approval number is the main number to look at because it's being driven by the perceptions of the economy.
All right, Matt, always great to see you. Thanks for joining us this morning. Bright and early, Matt Dowd, our political analyst here at Bloomberg Television.